Hello, my name is Daryl Robertson, and I am here with the extraordinary founder of the Temple of Universality, Rev Betty Tatalajski. Now, before we go into the program, I want to prepare you folks for the extraordinary things she's going to say.
We're going to talk about the raps heard round the world and the renting of the veil, as it were. Now, for the spiritualists that we're talking to, they know exactly what curtain this was, and when it happened on March 31, 1848, the renting of the veil between the two worlds of seen and unseen. So it's been a long time, but it seems that there are actually few people who know the story, and that's unfortunate.
You know, Betty, not only do they not know the story, they have no sense of how important it was.
It's very important.
In that when it happened, I read somewhere that this happened in around 1840, before the Civil War.
1848,
all right,
yes.
That at its height, spiritualists, there were around 20 million in the United States.
Yes, there were.
That's a huge number of people that were affected by this, by the story of what happened.
And of course the world was affected because on the general scale of the world, people were seeing, experiencing, talking to people that were supposed to be dead, but finding out that there is no death. And I love the way it happens. You know, Serapis Bey, the ascended master from Luxor, said it was my role. I was given that role to bring the two worlds together, the seen and the unseen, to prove, to demonstrate, as it were, that you will never die, there is no death. Now, the body can change and will, of course, but the spirit, which was created by the one creative source, known by many names, given many names, we call God, but some call Brahma, some call, well, different names. And those different names have not helped us in the human consciousness or in the world. We want everybody to call the creative source the same, and of course here we want it to be God. But we are spirit. We were created. We were not born. We were created and then born into bodies. But I love the story of how the veil came down, the curtain came down between the worlds, and the so-called secret was out. There is no death. And so, and the way it happened, how would you do that if you're given the job to bring to the world, on the world scene, this one simple fact?
Well, I think on the other side, Betty, they know there's two worlds.
On the other side,
it's clear to them.
They're knocking on the door.
They know there's two different worlds.
They're talking to us at night, and we say, oh, my imagination, oh, that dream I had last night. Oh, my mother was there, and she was talking to me. I wish it were real. And, you know, and it is so very real, folks. But the way it happened, and some of you, I hope a lot of you know the story, and you will celebrate it as well as I do, when the wrappings happened at the home of the little girls, Katie and Maggie, in Hydesville, New York. Now, these were the Fox sisters. Some of you hopefully know about the Fox sisters. I think the story is great, and how Serapis Bey was able to do this production. Okay, let's tear the curtain down between the worlds. And so in Hydesville, there started knockings on the wall, knockings on the floor, knockings on the ceiling, okay? And it was very disturbing. some of the neighbors said that the house actually shook. Now, we think of, we think like this, a few knocks. That's not what happened, folks. There were a lot of heavy knocks.
Banging.
Banging on the wall. Banging on the wall. So, what would you do? They couldn't sleep in their bed. It's just sliding. It's terrible. So
people would call this a haunted house.
Yeah, the haunted house. The devil was doing
yes.
It couldn't be anything good.
Yeah.
So it went on until there were lots and lots of people involved. Because if it was just a minor thing, if they just heard a couple of knocks and then it was found out what it was, oh, okay. But these were knocks heard round the world. Okay?
People were upset.
And so the two little girls decided knocked back. Now, isn't that just so unexpected? But just like a kid,
sure.
It's got to be a kid.
A kid that would
the
just,
parents
yeah.
And all those preachers that have come to damn the family, never thought about knocking back. But little Katie and Maggie did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when they did, the knocks were they were in response to these girls. They created a little ABC with the knocks with the young man, Charles Rosna, who had been murdered 5 years before. When he came as a peddler, he was a peddler boy.
So the girls were knocking on the door. There were all these bangings at the house, and they decided to knock back.
To knock back.
And then the knocks came in response. So they knew they were responding to them.
And they're saying, okay, here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
1 knock for this letter, 2 knocks for this one. It might have been a slow process, but Charles Rosna, who's
on the other side.
On the other
yeah,
side.
Okay.
Of course, he's not in the basement, but his body is. And it was found a couple of years later. When they looked right away, of course, they couldn't find him because the mud was like 4 feet deep. Later, when it dried out, they did find not only him, but his peddler chest. Okay?
So, Betty, this is one of those things that you would see on TV, on one of the cables that has that weird little color, all right?
Yes.
And there's some people investigating this phenomena, and they'd be talking to these 2 girls, and they're telling them what happened, and then with the knocking, they deciphered that there was a person who said that he had been killed in that house under these certain circumstances.
That's right.
Okay.
He was invited when he knocked on the door to sell his little wares. He was called in. He had lunch with them. He said, then the man killed me and buried me here 5 years ago. Now, of course, he's not talking from the cellar. He's in spirit. He never died, okay? But it was important for him to play that role to show us and to demonstrate you cannot die.
So
no
they went down there
finally,
and found the body?
Yes.
Okay.
At first, they could not because it was muddy.
Okay.
It's March,
all right.
Okay, in Hydesville, New York. It's cold and damp.
And people are hearing that this is the story. They disbelieve it anyway. First of all, they thought it was a devil. All right.
Course.
They thought it was just evil spirits. The family was crazy. Or putting this on for a show to get attention. Any one of those reasons.
They were working for the devil.
They were working for the devil, though. And so then what happens is they're saying that they're communicating with this, whatever it is that's causing the knocks. And through the transmission of the knocks, they deciphered messages saying this man, Charles Rosna, was the spirit of him was telling whoever was on the other side, the little girls in the family, by his knocking, that he had been killed. And so people hear this, and then they go down and they have trouble finding it.
And what is interesting to me also is the fact that 90 miles away, over in Poughkeepsie, New York, Andrew Jackson Davis, a young farmer, he's 19 years old, he said he had been in school probably 5 days in his life. And at the same time, he's hearing a whisper in his ear that says to him, gold is being discovered on both shores of your country. Of course, one was the wisdom that there is no death, and the other is Sutter's Mill over in California. If you remember, there was a great surge.
Gold rush, yeah.
Gold rushing to the gold field over in Sutter's Mill, but it was very slow here in New York.
About spirit.
About spirit.
But still, so these two things were simultaneous.
Same day the spirit said, they're telling
Wow.
Andrew Jackson Davis.
Wow.
And I love the story about him because he is called the father of modern spiritualism. So his story was interesting because when he is getting this information, then he says, I'm 35 miles from my bed, okay? You got to expand your mind a little bit, like a mystery story, okay? He said this soft breeze whispered in his ear. Well, he thought he was lying in his bed, but the next thing he knows, he's 30 miles out of town, standing on a hill with two men. One was Emanuel Swedenborg, the great,
Scientist,
philosopher,
metaphysicist.
religionist.
Yeah.
Yes, he was a minister, gave all of that up to actually monitor and to work with Andrew Jackson Davis. But the other one was Galen, the Greek philosopher who had made transition, 400 or 500 years ago, or what, 3,000 years ago. But anyway, these two men were there, and they had this wonderful golden staff, and it's diamond encrusted and emeralds and so forth, and they keep waving it. One of them is just waving it. Well, he's fascinated with that wand, and so here he is, 30 miles from home, with these two men, and admiring that golden staff. And one of them says to him, "Would you like to have this golden staff?" "Well, I sure would." This poor farm boy over here. And they says, "Well, if you will work with us, if you will write for us, because we have things that it's time to people in the world to know, and if you could write these things for us, you will earn this golden staff, but in all things, in all ways, in all days, keep an even mind." Keep an even mind. He did it. He wrote for them. There are books on subjects that he wrote that have not been really understood, maybe deciphered but not understood, because they are scientific tomes. I saw some in the library at the Camp Chesterfield, books like this on subjects you never heard of, besides a lot of very simple ones, okay?
Now, Betty, this is what we call these days channeling.
Channeling.
They came from the other side.
That's right.
He didn't have the background.
Nothing.
It's almost like the Course in Miracles.
Yes.
Because Helen Schucman,
yes,
although she was had her PhD,
yes,
I mean psychologist, she was an atheist.
Yes.
And here she gets all this information coming from Jesus,
yes,
about forgiveness.
Yes.
And clearly, it wasn't something she either thought about or wanted to think about.
Not a Jewish psychologist.
Yes, it was an atheist.
Yes.
And yet, it came. So this is what happened to Andrew Jackson Davis.
And, so anyway, that after 50 years of writing for them, he said to one of them, "Where is my golden staff?" And he said, "That thing you gave," now we would call it a mantra. Most of us have mantras, okay? He said, "That thing you told me to say for the last 50 years, in all things, keep an even mind. Is that my golden staff?" And they said, "Yes, it is." He said, "It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth more than the emeralds and the rubies and the diamonds." So it's a good lesson for all of us. But this renting of the veil happened long ago, 1848, on March 31st. And so many people do not know now that there is no separation between the worlds. It's only in your mind that you're here and they're there and they're dead, which is simply not so. It is not possible to die. As we mention quite often, you are spirit, and spirit cannot die. It was not born, and it cannot die. It is created. It is a part of the Creator, a part of the creative source. As we hear in back in the early part of the Tanakh, the Old Testament, it's called I am. That spirit within us is called I am that I am. So with this a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of awareness of truth, because there's always a lot of fiction that causes a lot of friction, but the simple truth is that you are spirit in a body, and you will never, ever die. I think that is a wonderful message.
Well, it is. But, Betty, you know, you were telling this story, and it appeared to me that what we call the renting of the veil,
yes,
it happened on a huge collective scale, because it eventually affected millions of people, basically in the United States and England, and spread over the world the news of this.
Those two.
Okay, those two. But it started there,
yes,
the renting of the veil. Now, when you're telling this story, and you're talking about the fact that we don't die, it occurred to me that each of us must have a similar renting of our own veil before we believe.
That's it.
Without the renting of that veil, it just doesn't seem possible.
It sounds too good.
Or
it
absurd.
Far-fetched.
It sounds like spooky.
You know, don't tell me that
devils.
stuff.
Yeah, that's
Look,
just that. Yeah.
This is what we hear. Don't tell me those fairy tales,
I don't want,
because I know the Bible. I
Yeah.
can quote it back and forth.
Yeah.
But when I get over to the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, the original Bible, and I go into Samuel, the book of Samuel,
It's true.
1 Samuel, and look in the chapter 28 and read that, because King Saul is facing the Philistines tomorrow. And he says, I haven't been good. I've listened to God, but I've not done what he said.
Sort of like Richard Nixon going to confession.
That's it. He says,
He knows he's sinned.
He says, tomorrow they're attacking, and I know they have a great army, and I just have to know. At this time, he's like the rest of us. He's very human there. And he says, you know, I'm really sorry I didn't pay attention to what God told me. I just did it my way. The same thing with us. We here on inner levels love one another. Be kind to your neighbor. It's time for arms to hug somebody. We hear all of this, but we allow it to be displaced by, first of all, worry.
Sure.
It turns into hate.
Okay, yeah.
And then it turns into killing. This is not a good thing. Okay? Listen to the voice, as God said, as Jesus said to us, ye are gods, and the temple of heaven is within you. Okay?
You know, Betty, when Samuel, in Samuel, when the king, when he wanted to go,
when Saul,
when Saul was facing this crisis, what he wanted to know was what was going to happen.
What's going to happen tomorrow?
So what did he do?
He says, find me a medium. And of course, we use the word witch.
Yeah.
People still use
the word witch, but it's truly a medium. Those people who have foreknowledge.
In my Bible, it says, he says, I need a witch.
Okay.
And then they put parentheses, okay, a medium.
Medium.
Okay. And so his associate here says, well, you know, you've killed them all. We had this campaign. We killed all the mediums, you know.
Yeah.
And he says, there's got to be one. You missed one. Find it. Find that person, male or female. Of course, a man would never admit that, you know.
He's hearing stuff.
But he knew there was a woman. So anyway, they find this one they call the medium or the witch of Endor. People
So
read it
that's
from
where the
time-
term
but
came in. The Witch of Endor
Witch of
is from
Endor.
Samuel in the Old
the
Testament.
Samuel 1, verse 28, and he says, "Find me one." They go, and she says, "Well, no, you're going to kill me if I do."
tell you what, yeah.
You know, he says, "I promise I won't." So anyway, she goes into trance. Samuel comes up, and he says, "What are you calling me forth for?" You know, it sounded like he was having a good time. You know,
Yeah.
maybe playing poker down in
Yeah.
in heaven.
The other,
you know.
yeah.
So anyway, he says, "Well, you know, tomorrow is a big day. The Philistines are at our door." He wanted to hear that they were going to be victorious, of course. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not what he heard. They said, well, the way he says it, Samuel says, "Well, tomorrow you and your 3 sons are going to be over here with me."
With me.
That is not what King Saul wanted to hear, but he knew that, he said, you know, he had been provoking and trying to kill David, and, you know, and David was the great, great king of Israel. So, you know, we don't expect anybody to believe what we say, but most of us believe the Bible.
Or at least we pick out parts of the Bible we
pick
believe.
out parts of it, you know.
See, Betty, this is what's amazing. This story that you've brought up about King Saul and the prophet Samuel and the
Yeah.
medium, which we refer to as the Witch of Endor,
Witch of
even
Endor.
today.
Yes.
All right?
Oh, we do, and isn't that sad?
Yes. Now, here is what we call psychic activity.
Yes.
Mediumship, the renting of the veil.
Mediumship.
Mediumship. But in the same token, when John the Baptist came, all right, and was ranting and raving, yelling at the Jews about what they've done, they've transgressed, they've gone wrong,
Yeah.
screaming at him,
Yeah.
they went up to John the Baptist and said, "Who are you? Are you Isaiah?"
Yeah, are you, yeah.
Was it Isaiah? Which one?
The one that, my master
Your master teacher, Elias. Yeah, Elijah. Yeah. Are you Elijah?
Are you Elijah?
Because Elijah, his reputation was as a prophet, as a leader of the children of Israel, trying to get them into shape, trying to shape them up, trying to get them to listen. And John the Baptist was so filled with the Spirit and the same belief, they went up to him and said, "Who are you? Are you Elijah?" Now, this is because they had a belief in reincarnation.
Yes, they did.
They did.
Because the last paragraph of Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament, the last paragraph says the Messiah will come, cannot come until Elijah comes again.
Again, till he comes again.
When Elijah comes again, then the Messiah will come. So they've been waiting for him all the time.
And that's why they asked John the Baptist if he was Elijah.
And of course he was.
Yes.
And Jesus said,
Yeah.
it. Well, Elijah has come. It was John the Baptist.
So here we have a book
Yeah.
upon which our culture is ostensibly founded
Around the world.
around the world. And you have phenomena such as prophecy, mediumship, reincarnation.
Absolutely.
All these things that have been wiped out of human consciousness, they're in there. They are in there as a part of that heritage.
They're sold to us as
Fairy tales.
fairy tales. And if you don't all believe one thing here, vicarious atonement, you'll all go to hell.
Yeah.
So it is amazing to me how these things are so clearly printed in the Bible, and we refuse to look at them. Well, I love the Witch of Endor, and
I think it's great that we find out that the Witch of Endor has its genesis in the book of Samuel in the Old Testament, and she's a medium.
she's a medium.
She's the medium.
She's the one that's left after they've killed,
Kill
a whole bunch
everybody.
of them.
That's
Okay?
absolutely, because they were no more wanting to know about that then than they are today.
That's right.
Excuse me.
The veil has been rent, and it's time that we accept it.
Step through that veil, 11 o'clock, every Sunday at the Temple of Universality. Rev Betty, Tatalajski. I don't think there's a shred of that veil around this